Okay, I want to cover another game between Pitschak and Flohr, played in Leibwerde, 1934. The opening is ECO code A29, which is an English opening. And I haven't covered the English opening in my other videos, mainly because I covered the primary openings for E4 and D4 because they comprise a little bit more than 80% of all the games that you'll probably play or that the masters play. And the opening, maybe I should say the game starts off by C4, and that only occurs in about 7% of master games. And the opening C4 can transpose into a Queen's Gambit Decline game, so sometimes they steer that way. The other opening I didn't really cover in all my opening lectures was this knight to f3, which often transposes into another opening. But let's get on with this game. Maybe I should say with c4, the idea here is that white is going to sort of attack and control the center from the sides. We saw this with the other openings where black would let white have a pawn in the center and then attack it from the side. So white's going to go about the same thing. So you're going to see not a lot of maybe white's pawns rushing into the center, but you'll see more of an attacking from the side, and very often you'll see the king's bishop or the bishop on f1 developed to g2, where it will sort of look along this diagonal and try to control these two squares. So that's sort of just a general overview. But the game continued. E5, the other common opening, or the very popular instead of e5, is where black would play knight f6, but here black plays e5, and then white plays knight to c3, once again, controlling the center. I gotta say, if you're not used to the English opening, you can always go for the objectives of the opening, which is control the center, develop your pieces, and castle. And here we see that. We see white's developing a piece, and it's really focusing on controlling these two squares, e4 and d5. And white has a firm grip on the d5 square. Black plays knight f6, sort of mirroring white's knight to c3, trying to battle for control for the two squares, for the two light squares here. White plays g3, intending to put its bishop on this square, as mentioned before. And now black plays d5 with the idea of it's going to help open the game, but also wants to get rid of white's firm grip on d5. If you think about it, the pawn is controlling d5, and a piece really can't move there. If this pawn here was gone, potentially white could control d5, but the pawn really helps to control that square. So here white is almost obligated to take the pawn, and then black takes back with the knight. Obviously, if white now plays a knight captures, the queen just recaptures. But here white, on its fifth move, will play bishop to g2, developing a piece and attacking the knight a second time. The knight is forced to move. And the knight, I'd say a natural move for a lot of people would just move the knight back. But here, black's going to choose to move it to b6 for two reasons. One, it helps still contain control over d5, but it also looks at this square, meaning black is now helping to control the c4 square. And the reason this is important is that this bishop here has moved to here, now concentrating on this diagonal. And if it didn't move to this diagonal here, if white continued like maybe moving the e-pawn, historically or maybe classically, the bishop would develop along these lines and help control the c4 square. But now this c4 square has been weakened due to the absence of the bishop. So sort of another reason why black moved the knight to b6. So it's white's sixth move, and white plays knight to f3, attacking the pawn, so developing a piece, helping control the center, attacking a pawn. Black has to play knight to c6, developing a piece, defending the pawn. Now, if you really look at it, there hasn't been a lot of deep analysis of the moves. There's just been a little bit of theory about how each side wants to play, and maybe, white's philosophy of attacking from the sides has something to do with it, and black's probably most strategic move is probably moving this knight to this square, where it will help control this square. But besides that, there hasn't been any real deep tactics involved in the game yet. But there will be. White now decides the castle, getting its king into safety, activating the rook somewhat, or now the rook can be activated. Black plays bishop to e7. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, well, where should I put it? Black could place the bishop here, but when it looks along this diagonal here, it's sort of hitting these pawns, maybe not too effective. If it was to place it here, it's also not really effective here. And also, and if if it places it here, it's sort of aiming at the king, but it's exposed to attack. It isn't protected. So black keeps the bishop sort of close to home. E7 is known as somewhat of a more defensive development, but it can easily get into the game, and it's also protected, so probably not a bad move. And then white plays d3, getting a nice grip on the e4 square, but also giving a diagonal for the bishop to develop. Black decides the castle to improve king safety, and also now the rook can, if necessary, slide over to the e-file, but not too sure where that rook should go, because this e-file is closed, so rooks want to go to half-open files, which are the C and D files. So white will want to get its rook over to to C1, and a nice file right now for black would be the D file. And now white develops its bishop to e3 on its ninth move, and this move looks a little strange because normally you don't develop your bishop to e3 in front of the pawn, because sort of like preventing the pawn's progress, but really what white intends is that it wants to push this pawn forward and get rid of black's pawn here. So that's the idea, is that it needs another piece to help support this move. So it moves its bishop to e3. And now black plays on its ninth move bishop to g4. And this really stops white from playing d4, because black's attacking one of the pieces that's supporting. Actually, maybe I'll say just turn it yellow. The knight is helping to support the move to d4. So black's attacking one of the pieces, sort of a guard or a defender, or maybe a supporting piece. Because if now white decides to play d4, this is where we first get into our real first tactical line, maybe, or more tactical line. If white plays d4, then black has this nice move of c4, hitting at this bishop right here. This bishop is sort of stuck, and what it's really threatening to do is to really mess up white's pawn structure. So what, after black plays c4, what is white really to do? Well, one of the options could be white could play knight takes e5, but then black could just play knight takes e5, and then when the pawn takes, The knight takes on e3, and then this pawn takes, and you can tell that, like I said, the pawn structure is really messed up for white. So let's back up to c4. What else do we have? Well, it looks like I'm running out of time for this video, so I'll continue this game on the next video.